Hello there and welcome. Today we are going to be making something quite unusual, and that is a floating moss ball. This is a real life plant slash algae that we have created so that it will float. This is not something you can normally buy from an aquarium shop. However, I feel it is so unusual that it is a nice thing to build for yourself. So let's get started. For this build you're going to need some fishing line, the lighter the better because you don't want to see it, a pair of scissors, an optional suction cup. Obviously you're going to need some moss balls. These are real live algae, and the most important aspect of this build are polystyrene balls, the size of which is completely up to you. You can even use different shapes such as squares. So the idea behind this build is we're basically going to be wrapping this ball in this algae. The algae doesn't mind, it's actually quite happy to be wrapped, and it will still grow and thrive the same way it does as if it would in its natural form. To do this we're going to be using this fishing line. Quite simple really. So the first thing we need to do is break up our moss balls. It's quite easy to do, but you have to be gentle. The idea is we're trying to create a flat sheet like this. We're not trying to break it into individual parts. The number of moss balls you will need to create this build varies really depending on the size of the polystyrene ball that you're using, and also the size of the moss balls, as they do vary. However, for this 6cm ball I'm using 3 moss balls, which are around 3 centimeters each. As you can see now, I've got my moss ball discs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the fishing wire to attach these balls, basically wrapping it round as so. So about halfway through the process you should have something like this, with 2 discs on top and below, and the fishing wire holding them securely in place. It can be a pretty tricky process to do this, however your patience will be rewarded. The final step is to use your remaining disc of moss ball to fill in the gaps, and also tie them in place with more fishing wire. You should finish up with something like this, a completely covered polystyrene ball in moss. Now what I've done on my final knot is left a long strand of fishing line, and this is what we're going to use to tether to your aquarium. I have found also that it helps to not cut away from the fishing line immediately, because you may find you need more length than you thought. Once you have your desired length of fishing line, however, feel free to cut it away. How you attach your moss ball to your aquarium is up to you, but I have found that if you tie your line around a sucker, preferably one with an indented end, then you will be able to use this sucker to stick it to the bottom of your aquarium. However, in this build I won't bother, as I'm going to be tying it around a piece of wood to secure it. So here is the final result of this build. As you can see, it is a moss ball and it is floating. I feel it's a very attractive and unusual addition to any aquarium. This particular one I've attached to this piece of wood here. You can barely see the thread. The fish are already enjoying it, and I think it looks very good and unusual. Certainly a talking piece for your aquarium. As I've said, you can use any size ball for this, so you can make them as big or as small as you wish. You can even make them different shapes. Another thing that I've experimented with is putting in some kinds of Java moss and Java fern. Even a nubia you can thread into this and make quite an attractive display. So if you like this kind of content, you like my channel, please subscribe to see more, and happy fish keeping!